Good evening, everybody. Dobry večer. We're going to let the crowd come on in and get some things done. So, I see Phil Air is here. Phil will be our guest tomorrow night. Do not miss that broadcast. You know, Phil is a great guy. You got to see him in my special on the civilian side of the last 4 years when I ran the Ukraine pet rescue video with him and my friend Natalia. In the driving they did across it, he actually just left as well, doing more work. So, Molodets, as we say here. So, it's great to have Phil in the room, and Shaun Penner will be logging in and joining here in a minute. A lot of things happening. I don't know if you've heard, but Zelensky has the cards. Who knew? We знаємо. We knew. So yeah, it's not surprising. Actually, anyone who's been paying attention to the Ukrainian fight knows that Ukrainians were going to be able to teach the West how to fight because America has not been doing near-peer operations for a long time. Not to diminish those who do the services. In fact, that's sort of the job I leave to Pete Hegseth. It is what it is, right? So let me get my cheat sheet up here of notes for tonight while we wait for our buddy Shaun Penner to show up and talk about how things. Oh my God, how do I get a dark mode on this? Please tell me there's a dark mode. Do you light theme? No. Do you dark theme? Yes, I love dark theme. I prefer dark theme. Yes, Zelensky definitely has the best cards. He does. He has Ukrainians. You know, when you're fighting for your existential existence, it's the biggest difference. You know, you fight for when you and this is one of the things I think that led a lot of people I know to push against wars overseas. What are we fighting for? There are folks who understand what we're fighting for overseas if we have to. I actually advocate destroying the 3 camps in Afghanistan for reasons that having really done the work as a civilian. Remember, I'm not a military guy. Remember, I didn't come into this as an agency guy. I had no interest in doing this when I was in college and in the music scene and on the radio. But then George Bush invaded, and then had to go the neocon route, and I had to learn what's all going on. And so all sanctions lifted on Russia. Really? What? Hold on, we gotta go do that now. And yeah, so we'll see. Okay, we'll come back to that. U.S. grants temporary waiver to allow India to buy Russian oil. Modi got on the phone call. So I think it's really specifically to. It looks like it's in Moscow Times actually celebrates it. U.S. allows India to buy Russian oil during U.S.-Israel war with Iran. So in order to fight out one battle, the United States is going to do this other thing. U.S. says, thank you for bringing that up, by the way. I appreciate that. You knew that's what we're here for. Let me also, if you don't mind, give me a second. I'm going to get this in the workspace here so we can see what everyone's saying. The wiretap. Let me get the chat up here so I can see what you're saying. I can see, and I broke my glasses earlier. I don't know if you all heard me say that in my earlier broadcast. I landed down hard on the couch, taking a nap to read, and all of a sudden I heard crunch, and I knew what it was. I understood. I knew how that was going to turn out. Actually, I'm surprised I didn't do it sooner. It happens. And these are meant to be durable. These have been through some shit. And the problem is, people said the other was like, fine, these. The problem is with these, this lens is not as in focus as this lens, so I don't like them. I'm walking around doing like in out, trying to see if I can see it. Yes, you can get them fixed. In fact, I can. I used super glue I already had. I didn't even have to go to the store for the super glue. I had super glue on hand and cleaned the glasses, fixed them myself, and got right back to work. And our brother is in from the UK. You know, Shaun, I've always appreciated it when we have someone from the UK, someone from the US, also in UA. We're all in the U's. Isn't
We
that
certainly
cool?
are.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
I hear you, UK.
Yeah, well, that's good. We're back. I'm just back from the Isle of Man, so I thought we'd shoot the breeze with you for 10 minutes before let everybody.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So
everybody.
one of our great supporters here, she brought up that U.S. Eases sanctions on Russian oil sales to India during Iran conflict. Conflict. Can we get past this word conflict? We've seen rockets kill
Yeah.
170 people, civilians. I'm just counting the civilians so far, and we're still calling it conflict. This is anyway, interesting term. So, how are
It's a
you?
dreadful time, isn't it? Good.
Yeah, yeah.
Just been to the Isle of Man. Went to see Chris Swampy Garrett's family, who died, EOD guy that died last year in Ukraine. A good friend of mine who really started my love affair with Ukraine. And we went over to the Isle of Man to raise some money for charity. And we did. We raised several £1,000s for charity for Manx
Hmm.
support and Prevail, which was great. And then I met the governor of the Isle of Man. We had a bit of a break, did a couple of talks talking about Ukraine. We talked to about 200 people roughly in 2 days. So it was a really
Hmm.
good, worthwhile trip. And now I've sort of gone back to visit my family on the mainland and have a bit of a break here while I sort out some business and before I head back to Ukraine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I said this earlier. Being able to see people that matter in your life is a very big deal. My parents are gone. My family is essentially not
My,
here. So
my,
my Ukrainian family. I feel good if I can go 2 kilometers away and go see my Ukrainian mom, and I haven't been over there in the last couple of weeks. Her birthday was actually on the 24th, and I messaged and sent a little voicemail, and it's only 2 kilometers away. I'm such a bum.
I'm sorry I can't do much about the light at the moment. I'm sort of hotbedding it and just sort of in
It's good.
transition. But no, you see my mum's pet badger, stuffed badger she's got on here. It's like it's like a taxidermist dream in this
Yeah, you got a
study.
taxidermy
Yeah,
special going on.
yeah. So she's never had that so as long as I can remember this stuffed badger on there. But he's been on more TV shows than I can than probably me. To be fair, he was there as soon as I was
Nice.
exchanged. He was in the background. So I don't even know if he's got
Ah,
a name. To be fair.
Badgers, one of the things about Badgers, when I was a cyclist, I was a big fan of Bernardino, and his nickname was the Badger. And it's because when cornered, they attack harder.
Yeah.
You don't want to get involved in a Badger fight at the den itself. You're not going to win that. Uh, Speaking of
No.
releases, before we get into some of the things we wrote up, we had a
No.
300. I thought it was two, what I heard first time, but they said 300 plus some civilians, a handful of civilians, returned home yesterday. And I saw some Marine flags in there. First Feodosia
Yeah, I
in there
haven't
as
had a good
well.
look at the list yet. I think it was 200 and
Yeah.
then a 300. I think Ferdinand said that there was going to be a significant prisoner exchange, and I didn't want to write
Yeah.
about any of it. And we did hear about it, and we didn't jinx it, and I didn't want to say anything. And
I feel
so
the
I'm
same
kind of
way.
hoping some friends are home, which is some good news on a pretty hectic since we last talked week.
Yeah. We'll come to the hectic side. It's been
It's
crazy.
crazy.
Of the families I specifically have talked to that I know over the last 3 years, just because I know some of our viewers know my work, I have not heard someone receive someone home yesterday. Um, and I will say we've had a good run of it this last year where we got mostly good news each time, but this time, good news for those who did, and
Yeah.
everyone celebrates it like that. And then for those who didn't, actually, I would say what's if I ever feel Mr. Mopey, I feel bad today, guy, I can look at their attitudes, and they have a great attitude considering the suffering and pain that they go through. That, I write to him, we will wait. We're waiting together,
Yeah.
and they know, and we just get to the next part. And there was a drought of releases for a while a couple years ago that really were painful to the families because instead of having
Oh,
like every month or every couple of months, oh, there you are, you have a face.
is that better or worse?
So it's fine. Um, But we had a drought for months, and then finally some releases, and then and that type of drought really starts being psychologically pressured. But let's get to. I think we got a good dose of people here. 16 people, and it'll tick up as we go along. Shaun, the idea that America can learn from Ukrainians. Now, I mean, had anyone had been saying that around here for a while?
Well, where do we want to start? I mean, it's a year ago since that infamous meeting at the Oval Office. Pretty much, we
That's
all
right.
know how that went. You do not have the cards. You're starting World War III, and where's your suit? And did you say thank you? So now we're sitting here with Iran kicking off, with America bombing
That's right.
Iran, and total what I consider to be a balls up and of an operation, still with no clarity what the end game is. You know more about Iran than I do, and the mullahs and how they're going to fight this. And if this is good boots on the ground, being an urban environment, there's going to be many casualties if Americans put boots on the ground. And what's it for? Are they going to change the regime? Nobody knows yet. It's really
I don't see how they do
terrifying
it.
stuff. No.
Well, I wrote an article a few days ago that was talking about the arsenal that, I mean, I had to do the research on figure out who had what, and it's an antiquated time to compare 2003 to 2026, which is partially the point. But I took the time to look up like what type of military tools did and cyber tools, information tools, ally proxies did Iraq have compared to what Iran has now, and it's just night and day. I mean, the fight is completely different. Plus, you have essentially a stable civilization despite the oppression of the religious autocracy. You did not have that in the time of Saddam Hussein. You have that with Iran. You've had that with Iran for the longest time. So that's a huge, huge part of the problem.
It's massive, and now you've got a situation where the president of the United States has pretty much spent a year challenging, military support for Ukraine. Pretty much offended every veteran in Europe and the UK by denouncing our sacrifices in Afghanistan. And the list goes on. He's totally, pulled away from Ukraine's support for Ukraine. Even in that year, entertained an ICC, indicted war criminal on US soil, trying to smooth it over with Russia. And now he's had to go cap in hand, or the Pentagon's had to ask for help to deal with the very drones that, Ukraine have been dealing with for the last 4 years. So it's an absolute clusterfuck of a policy by the Trump administration that now seems to have got itself into a situation. And still this week, Levitt, the White House press secretary, and I'm trying
She
to
still
blame
has a job.
Biden,
Someone else does it.
by Biden and the framework for Biden and Zelensky and Ukraine being the problem for the situation they're in now, which is a load of garbage. This is another, sort of cross messaging from the Trump administration and the White House. Are now asking for Ukraine for help. I mean, of course, Ukraine are going to do it. Of course, Ukraine are going to assist its partners. But that is deeply embarrassing for Trump. And again,
Absolutely.
it's where do we go from here? How is that going to affect how we move forward and what's going on? My editor's going to Lebanon because he's going to go and talk to the refugees coming through from Lebanon into Syria. There's quite a few now, something like 30,000 now trying to get out of the country. Essentially, we're causing another, refugee crisis on top of the 6 million, internally displaced refugees in Ukraine, and those 4 million that left. And I mean, it's just chaos that's going on at the moment. Now the petrol pumps are going up. We see today, people are talking to me today in the UK saying the petrol prices have gone up, and there's a nervous feel about that. We're actually in World War III, and we have a little. We'll touch on a bit about Hungary and how that's going on later, because that
Yeah.
rhetoric is now manifesting into some pretty dicey words from both sides, with troop movements and you know, you know, Orban actually in a position where he could lose the election. What's he doing to try and cling on to power? Was he going to start another, another front on
Is he going to
Ukraine?
get some friends to lend some digital help?
Oh, it's just chaos at the moment.
Run
So
to the Kremlin. Daddy has a meeting.
there's really no light at the end of the tunnel at the moment. It's a very where we said last week, or the last time we talked, certainly Ukraine is getting the upper hand, and the pendulum swinging back towards them. I'm not saying they're going to motor into Mariupol and take back the occupied territories, but certainly they're gaining ground, and there is a power shift there. And long comes, we said then, Trump comes to the rescue. So I'm a bit confused myself as someone that watches this, whether this is going to benefit Russia or whether this is actually aiding Russia, stretching NATO, stretching the availability of weapons that could be supplied to Ukraine moving forward, and also starting another front in Hungary. So yeah, absolutely.
Anyone wondering if they've actually been kind of quiet this week on a certain level, but we had an air raid go off a little bit earlier. In fact, I have to do this, unfortunately, for our viewers. If you're sensitive to air raid and/or air attacks that may kill your host, just telling you.
I'm all right, Jack.
Yeah, right. Hey,
Okay.
thanks, bro.
Yeah,
But
no problem. So I got your back.
normally where you're at is also very active, and it is tonight. So they're being active, and I figured they would probably ramp down a little bit for the week and then come back up. But let me run down just a couple notes here about what happened in Iran this week, and then we'll draw it into this. So starting February 28th, the decapitation strike killing Khamenei, 40 officials dead, the command infrastructure fractured but standing. The A team of his units were still standing. Retaliation started immediately. 9 countries hit. Hormuz closed within 24 hours. Monday, the war metastasized. Hezbollah enters. 6 Americans killed. Friendly fire over Kuwait. Pentagon's not a regime change war framing fell apart real time. Tuesday, March 3rd, the nuclear mission was made explicit, with the several locations being mentioned and attacked by Israel. Bombed the Assembly of Experts mid-session, while it tried to pick a new supreme leader. We'll come to the supreme leader thing here in a minute. That's a note to keep. Qatar shot down Iranian jets, and the straits effectively closed. Wednesday, March 4th. I remember Wednesday. It was only 2 days ago. The industrial phase, 2,000 U.S. strikes confirmed, 20 Iranian ships sunk, including a carrier-class vessel. It was a drone vessel. U.S. submarines torpedoed an Iranian frigate off of Sri Lanka, and Kurdish armed operation went public. I think we're going to talk about Kurds as well. Thursday was a pivot of the second phase. IDF chief of staff announced that the next phase was starting, and Hegseth warned of a dramatic surge. B-2s began hitting deeply buried bunkers. Azerbaijan was hit with Iranian drones for the first time. And the House rejected war powers by 7 votes, including that moron out of Pennsylvania that can't figure out where he's supposed to be. Friday, March 6th, today, brought B-2 penetrator campaign into full force, and CENTCOM's claimed that 90% missile reduction, in which Iran answered by hitting a tanker off Kuwait. Weekend prediction centers around the Houthis' decision in succession crisis within Tehran on whether or not the Strait of Hormuz can be forced open, while the global economic damage has become unmanageable. And I ran down a series of lists of which naval vessels were hit. Won't read it off here, but basically I'll put a little report together by Sunday. And also, and then brings it back to Ukraine. Zelensky said that at least 800 PAC missiles had been used as interceptors. Now, I don't know about you, but I never see them waste Patriots on Shaheds. Patriots are saved for Iskanders, Kinjals, and the attempts at trying to take out the big missiles. They're not wasted on Shaheds. So I don't know what they're firing at, and 800 Pac 3s. Again, it may not be aimed at Shaheds. It may be aimed at some of the incoming missiles, because we do know, you can see from the video in Israel, definitely missile attacks and strikes as I was seeing in a lot of the sort of what I call neutral media, meaning that it's not the Russian media sector, but it's also not necessarily BBC, New York Times, you can see that the Iron Dome isn't so perfect, and therefore
Mm.
the fuck around find outside for Israel is notable. And I will remind one more thing is that I know a lot of Israelis who absolutely despise Netanyahu. They see him in the same way most of my lefty friends see Dick Cheney, and he's also got big grudge to deal with. His brother was killed years ago, so his whole psychology, I've always said, was rooted in that. So, but that Pact 3, I want to get back to Zelensky and throw it to you. Is that Pact 3 announcement of 800 at least expended? Zelensky says we haven't used that in the entire time of the war. How are you fighting
Yeah.
this? Go.
It's absolutely again what we just discussed, an absolute cluster.
You're right.
It's not been thought out. I mean, let's just listen to Pete Hegseth talking. It sounds like he's on a Call of Duty mission. I mean, it's not strategic. It's not militarily what people are used
Hmm.
to. So it beggars belief that you could actually open up another front. And I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but you know, it all goes back to what, people who are just joining us now will be going, why are they talking about Iran? And, if you haven't just seen the news over the last week, this is incestuously all linked together. We've been saying it for a considerable amount of time. Is Trump launching this just to give Russia some breathing room, Russia some deflection from what they're doing in Ukraine? Or can we expect something big in Ukraine now? I mean, Putin, as we said in
Hmm.
the last, is going through his own problems. But now any sort of Patriot missiles we were going to get are now stopped. They're not going to. It's not going to happen for Ukraine. So it's a bit of a worrying time that the support from Ukraine could even wane further, and restricting NATO even buying back free Patriot missiles and hardware to support Ukraine. So there is that element to it. It just strikes me as odd that you would go into launch an offensive, a war, whatever you want to call it, whatever they're spinning it as. It's not a war. I was reading somewhere where they said taking out a submarine taking out an Iranian ship, yes, in another ocean denotes that
Hmm.
it is a war because it's not regional. It's something different. Um, it's bringing it to a new level in a way that essentially it could just go.
Right.
It could spiral out of control. Russia have been remarkably quiet about what's going on in Iran. They're very
Well, speaking
limited to what they can do. They're worried about Cuba.
exactly. Speaking of which, one of our great viewer listener friends here mentioned this to me when we were getting ready for the show. CNN headline: Russia is aiding Iran's war by providing intel on U.S. military targets. Say, and I'll just
It's
read the
going to
opening
come to
part.
that. Yeah.
Russia is providing Iran with intelligence about locations and movements of American troops, ships, and aircraft, according to multiple people familiar with the U.S. intelligence reporting on the issue. The first indication that Moscow has sought to get involved in the war. Now, this is one of the things about the folks that say, we're not at war with Russia, and why are we always hating on Russia, and Trump throwing out the red carpet. It's like, if you didn't realize that Russia is not your friend, then you're stupid, you're co-opted, you're corrupt, or you're deaf and dumb and blind. And now
Absolutely.
here it is. They're targeting him again. Yeah.
This is a president who's got a picture of him hanging up in the White House. It's just bizarre. And we've been saying it for so long.
Vin lubit Putina, as we say
And
in Ukrainian. Vin lubit Putina. He loves Putin.
you just you don't know what's going on in their heads. You sit there. I was never one of those guys with, as I said before, was compromat. I was never one believed that Russia had compromat on Trump and that he would do their bidding. Now I'm sitting there thinking, my God, what do they have on him? I'm
Mm-hmm.
absolutely turned. The Epstein files all linked to this, as we apologize if we're going over, but some people may not have heard the last episode. But we it's all incestuously linked. Russian intelligence, the Epstein files, compromat. Is he invaded? Is he launched an offensive campaign on Iran just to sort of deflect the problems he's got at home? Because just this week, Trump had more Epstein files released. ones that had him in it. That he'd kept.
They pulled him out, and there's a thing called the Streisand effect. A lot of our viewers usually will be pretty sophisticated enough to know this term. The Streisand effect of, like, if you bury it and you try to hide it, it only brings more attention to it. If sometimes there are ways to handle these things. So I put together a piece based on today, one of my articles that came out today, the senator, the pedophile, and the Kremlin, and it's based in the really
Catchy.
amazing, yeah, the amazing read from on C-SPAN last night of Sheldon Whitehouse really picking apart the part of and let me say, the part that leapt out to me why I wanted to do it was he filled in the information based on the Jeffrey Epstein file. See, I don't even think about Epstein so much I can't put his name in there. I'm very used to the Trump-Russia arguments. I know the Mueller report inside and out except for what's redacted. Uh, if you know the case well enough, you can read behind the black marks. But he really took the time. Like the video that I put in the article is at least, hold on, how long? 48 minutes of a standing speech in an empty house, no less. And so I took the transcription, went over to Coffee, and picked it apart. And he really glues together more of the actual compromise that we're talking about and we're concerned with, by saying, really it is as real as the conspiracy theorists may have said. Now, I'm with you, at least in that my view has always been not to rely upon the compromise. And I
Mm.
still stick to my view, which is that his worldview aligns with the Russian desired model. So when Russia tries to put the Malorossiya article out there, little Ukraine is Ukraine is little Russia. Big boats, little boats is the way I call that. And so he definitely has the big boats, little boats mentality. And I think that mentality is more advantageous than the actual compromise. Because compromise works when you have shame,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
assume,
yeah, yeah.
you know,
I
keeps me out of
assume
trouble. I'm not going to go to that strip bar down the street because I wouldn't want to be seen in the strip bar. Actually, I just don't like them, but
it
that type
depends.
of thing,
I
right?
think it depends on the level of compromise. I mean, if it's seriously
Fair,
bad,
fair. Yeah.
if it's just an affair, like Stormy Daniels, I don't think he really gives a shit.
Yeah,
It's
obviously
not.
doesn't give a shit. He'll just send a
Yeah,
lawyer out to
but
ferry that
when
story.
you start bringing in children into it and kids, and how far does this go? Then you're sort of thinking, hold on, I don't really want my family to realise that at some point there is some shame, I think, in there. And whatever, we don't know. We'll probably never know what actually they've got on him.
Hmm.
But clearly, I mean, this is we said before, it's in its embryonic stage. We're still learning more and more about this as it goes on, and then suddenly more invasions come along and more problems. So it's
Hmm.
like people don't want to get caught, and
Right.
and I don't want to think like that, but generally, I think that's what most people are thinking. There's some smoke. There's some smoke definitely, and there's got to be a fire, and we're going to find out
Yeah,
at some point.
absolutely. Also, in that, let me go back to a comment just to put it on record here with our viewers, is that my view of the dossier is to remember what a dossier, especially in that form, that 34 pages, is. I had to do it when I was as a young person working in management. I worked for the regional manager to spy on both our other stores and the rivals. And in corporate intelligence, if you're hired, for instance, to assess a company, and you hear, I'm giving you a theoretical, not that it ever happened in front of me, but a theoretical that you hear the vice president of a software company is going to break off and go start his own company. And you research it and you research it and you just can't substantiate, but you definitely heard it once. You still want to put it in the fucking notes. If you don't put it
Mm.
in the fucking notes, and the day that guy walks out and does something, that company that hired you to know what's happening comes up and says, did you know about this? Well, yeah, but I just couldn't substantiate. You couldn't substantiate it, so you didn't at least tell us when you do a gradation of
This may be a
intelligence,
problem.
yeah, that this
Yeah,
may
yeah.
be a forecast. So dossiers are designed to gather all things, and the Steele dossier in particular was not for public consumption yet. It was also not for the client level yet. It was
Mm.
intercepted, obviously, and this is public record. It was intercepted mid gathering, and therefore the public seeing it and go, oh, it's not true, it's not about what's true and not true, it's about what's being said. And Christopher Steele, who is a quality intel guy who knew these contacts, is gathering what's said. And you and I live in Ukraine. How many things do we hear that's said that winds up having an ounce of truth, maybe a lot of bullshit, but there's a little bit of an ounce of truth going on. There's a rival between Zelensky and Zelensky. Duh.
Mm.
But like, what does it mean? Well, if I just said it's on-off switch, yes and no, that's really not how it works.
No, I mean, you only have to speak to Ukrainians. They'll tell you they don't fight for Zelensky; they fight for Ukraine. So
Amen.
even if Zelensky was dethroned and gone, somebody else, they would keep fighting. I mean, it's as
Right.
simple as that. They haven't got a choice. So, I mean, it was enough. I think Noam got the sack today. Kirsten, what's her name? Kirsty Noam? I can't remember.
Yes.
I think she got fired today eventually. So,
Yeah. Christy Lewandowski.
happening.
I mean, Christy No. The dog
Yeah,
killer.
she's got the sack today. So I'm pretty sure, this is your next one will be probably the FBI director Kash Patel. So I mean, he's another one that's probably going to get the boot at some point.
Yeah, because think about it this way. He gutted another thing we had to talk about this week. We didn't talk about last week, and you were very busy. I like that you're busy, by the way. That's good.
No, I don't. I want to go home.
No, I get that, but I mean, it's at least they know that you have things to offer. Is that Kash Patel this last week when I was on a few times, um, was responsible for removing the counterintelligence unit 12 that was keeping an eye on Iranian espionage, and now we're
Yeah.
fucked, and that's going to have consequences. And there's a lot of problems with the fact that they keep doing it. For what reason? They're
What
doing
reason?
it to keep your hand out of the Kushner pie. It's a big deal. I want to get to our top headline though of the thing: the Shahed problem, cheap drones, and expensive air defense. And let me hand it to you with this. Mikola Melnick, who I'm going to see this week to do an interview with, is a commander from the 47th Magura. And when he's in America talking to American commanders, they come up with their Bradleys and their Abrams mentality. And he's a Bradleys expert. He loves Bradleys here. But he says, you have this $1 million tank. Yeah. All I have to do is top pop it for about, pull out the abacus, $700, $750, and I take that $1 million item out. No, you're so silly. Is he? Because that's what we have.
We have that. I mean, you're going to see the similar things that are happening in Ukraine now over military bases in the Middle East. If you're launching yourself into the war thinking you're number one, and you're pushing away from the very people, Ukraine, not just pushing away, but verbally attacking Zelensky, you're pushing away the very people that have been fighting this and have the tech and know everything to do about drones and what they can do. And that's what I find extremely odd, that even just this week with the launch of offensive operations on Iran, you've got press releases being read out by Levitt, you've got Trump saying things, and it's still about Biden. It's still about Zelensky, even though Zelensky's offered to help, fight those drones, give their expertise to partners. Yeah, the White House is still pushing that same framing, which is deeply disturbing. And drones are the way, is the warfare now. I mean, drones are the new sniper, the new artillery. They're cheaper to move, cheaper to buy. They're safer to move. You can build them up in situ. You can move far more drones, frames than you can artillery shells. And they're not going to blow up when you take them to the front lines. If they, you can build them in situ. So, there's a lot of things that the White House seems to be dismissing, and let's face it, there is no peace talks at the moment. So, what are they shielding? Why are they not changing focus? Why are they not supporting Ukraine? I still don't know. Is it a pride thing? Are we going to, you're going to lose American servicemen over pride? I'm not sure Americans will take to that very kindly, especially if you have to put in ground forces. So, it's still baffling to me which way the White House is going. They seem very chaotic. And I think a lot of why NATO and especially the Brits have got a hard time from Trump again, were quite slow to react, was because they wanted to make a point. You've just you've slacked us off for the last year. You've insulted all our veterans and our commitments in Afghanistan, and now you're calling on us to help you again? It's like, we will do.
Exactly.
I know we will do, but I think that hesitance, because of the fact that the whole operation is not even congressional approved. So, congressionally approved. So I just wonder if that was it might be perceived as an illegal, or why people are reluctant to just go on a defensive stance. I mean, once Iran started flinging their missiles and drones pretty much into every country, hitting bases in Cyprus, I think we've got a good reason to react now. However, UK's going through an absolute clusterfuck of a MOD, and you've got 6 destroyers. 3 of those are in dry dock. We're struggling with a 29 billion Ministry of Defence deficit. So we're struggling. What can we do with a defence force of 70,000? Probably 30,000 of those are actually, probably less than that, are actual teeth. So what can we do? We're fighting a war in Europe. This isn't. Trump portrays it as you're not helping us. Hold on a minute. We're fighting a continental war.
That's
not
right.
Iran. We're fighting a continental war that's involving 4 years, 1.2 million Russians who are casualties from this, millions displaced and killed. So, and Trump goes on the offensive to Britain and Starmer. And I think that, as talking to a lot of Brits here, it's probably a good time for me to come home. A lot of Brits here are, I would say, not happy with the way Starmer's handling immigration. But I mean, I see the same thing here as you see in Ukraine. People are just pissed at Trump and how, his stance on the UK and how he's interfering in politics. I don't think it's going to have essentially, there is a populist in Farage and Reform. So he does get a lot of support here because of the immigration, pushing the immigration agenda. But where it's come and stand is Trump's total constantly attacking the UK is having a bit of a detrimental effect here, in my view. I think it's having a negativity, because certainly veterans are starting to get, extremely annoyed about, their efforts in Afghanistan just to be, poo-pooed by Trump, who's not even formally apologised for his remarks. And 1 year earlier, it's clearly a framework and a stance, because Vance was doing the same thing 12 months earlier, saying the same thing. So it's clearly an opinion and a framing that from the Trump administration. So they're calling into question the special military relationship this week, which the special relationship between us. I think that's that's not the case, but certainly Trump's seems to be pissing on all of America's longest serving allies at the moment. So where this goes,
he doesn't respect them in the first place, and I appreciate that you've been a good voice for what British soldiers have to say about the service. And Sir Rod Stewart actually came out and retirement. I haven't seen him on stage in a long time. Comes out, basically just throws down and says, "How dare you?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I was angry. I mean, that was one of my biggest tweets of the year, I think, was that, the fact that I was angry at Trump for his comments about Afghanistan, and that just is, that's Denmark, that's all the allies, that he had a pop at. And he's dealing with more with foreign policy now than he's dealing with any of the problems at home, Trump. I mean, he's clearly not wanting to deal with anything inside America at the moment. It's all about starting new wars, dealing with the one that you've got, fake peace talks. Still, somebody convince me that there's actually a peace talks going on. What's happened with it? It's now stalled. And we said, if he goes into Iran, starts bombing Iran, that's the peace done. That's now Russia now targeting Americans and American bases and giving that information to the Iranians, who are, an absolute Islamic shitheads, extremists.
Yeah.
The very people, the weird thing is, the very people, the right wing and the reforms of this world, the very people who are fighting immigration here are supporting Trump, who's
Exactly.
leading to Russia, who's leading the world towards Russia, who's now bombing Americans. It's like, what the hell is going on? Do you not see what your leader is siding with? Not saying anything bad about Putin and Russia, yet this They're
Well,
targeted
I have
against,
the quote from
soldiers.
I have the quote from, by the way, to our friends who are here, if you have your various Twitter accounts, etc., please boost out that we're live here on Substack,
We are
because these other
live.
platforms do not let us know. They're not allowing on Facebook or X any announcements to off platforms. So it's a thing. Anyway, Scott Bassett, who's a really freaky dude. That dude,
You
when
have
I
to see
watch
the
him
pictures
talk,
of it. Yeah.
is well, when he talks, he's just robotic and distant. He's got no soul. So here's his tweet
It's
earlier.
like a Thunderbirds puppet. It's like
I
it's like a
oh yeah.
it's like a.
Good assessment. He says President Trump's energy agenda has resulted in oil and gas production reaching the highest levels ever recorded. To enable oil to keep flowing to the global market, the Treasury Department is issuing a temporary 30-day waiver to allow Indian refiners to purchase Russian oil. This delivery short-term measure did not provide significant financial benefit to the Russian will not provide significant financial benefit to the Russian government, as it only authorizes transactions involving oil already stranded at sea. India is an essential partner of the United States, and we fully anticipate that New Delhi will ramp up purchases of U.S. oil. The stopgap measure will alleviate pressure caused by Iran's attempt to take global energy hostage. So let me address that and then throw it to you. Is that this phrase like the stopgap measure will of buying Russian shit will help buy American shit. A real negotiator who knows the art of the deal would say, Modi, we have oil. Okay. So don't worry about the Russian oil. How much do you need? But he didn't do that.
To be honest, mate. I'm not going to pretend I'm an economist because I'm not. 'Cause somebody would
Oh,
just.
I'm not either.
But you
But
don't need to
I
be an
get this kind
economist.
of business. I get this
The
kind of
straits.
business.
You don't need to realize the amount of the world's oil and energy comes through the Strait of Hormuz. And you're just sitting there watching that just get strangulated. Who's going to benefit from that? Well, it's certainly
Mm,
going to be Russia as being a provider of, quite a substantial amount of oil, even though their refineries are getting blown up by Ukraine. So it is Russia are going to benefit from the small price rise. I did read just before we came on actually that it's still lower than previous. The price per barrel of oil is lower
mm.
than before, but it's still going to increase up. I think it's up 15% the last time I looked. It might be up more now. So it is. They are going to get a kickstart and some benefits from that. So it is a worrying aspect that I think looking here over the last week, the price per litre has gone up about 8 to 10p per litre, depending on where you go. Some of the petrol
Hmm.
stations have got no petrol in already because people are panic buying. So,
Right.
that's only going to go up considerably more because of what he's done in Iran. I just don't understand why you would launch, America of all people would launch a war with Iran, knowing that they don't have the drone the capability to deal with Shaheeds, because that they
Hmm.
could just keep making them and launching them all day long, and they're just going out hitting bases. And we've seen that happen. One of the biggest fears in the UK is a Shadow Fleet tanker just popping up with similar to what we saw in Operation Spider's Web. Suddenly, two cargo containers open
Right.
up, and you've
Right.
got drone swarms coming out of Shadow Fleet tankers, because they're unregulated, and that's one of the biggest. We could end up with drones coming into the UK. So that's getting talked about a lot now. We've also talking about, excuse me, how Mossad and the Israelis use cameras to
Yeah.
target Khamenei. And, London is one of the most videoed camera cities
It
on
really
the
is.
planet.
It
And
really
you got
is.
a nine. I was talking to someone ago. You can imagine you got a £9 an hour basic pay guy just picking his nose, watching it, and not realizing the world's terrorists are hacked into his system, looking at the same thing he is. So, it is. We live in an extremely dangerous times with some very capable people in the Middle East, and you would like to think that America had gained, planned, and thought this through, but it's just not
No,
looking
like
like it
our
at all.
conversation with Fred Wellman last night, who's a retired lieutenant colonel, served for many years, and has that as his longest work. We said this that the effort in the first year was all at DEI, transgender, being macho. And I may have sent you one of these posts of one of my friends here. I won't say her name, but she's a singer here in Kiev, and her ability to do pull-ups is off the chart compared. And she's like what I call 6'1,000. She's about probably 6'1", and she can do all those snatch pull-ups better than just about any men I know. And I see, Pete Hegseth out there trying to be Mr. Tough Guy. All of that was far more important than actually being prepared. So as a soldier, because you're the soldier here, um, the fuck around find out stage of someone not prepared to go out and fight. How many times do you think, someone who isn't ready to fight, and we use the example of some people who came here from the West, for instance, who suddenly ran out and they want to be a soldier, and they're not soldiers, and they shouldn't be out there. They should be doing something else. Let's do some reality check on that.
Amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics. That's generally so true in any professional military. Before you even get down to the water mitters and the spaceship door gunners and the underwater knife fighting instructors that turn up to places like Ukraine, you've got the problem in Ukraine and essentially Russia that you're now training up people that formerly worked as car washers in IT, doing other jobs. They're not career soldiers. Both sides have gone through their armies. And whatever armies that Ukraine had, a lot of those are still being held, especially in Mariupol, being held in captivity. So, you've got all these ill-trained people coming in. The only good, the well-trained ones are going to be special forces guys or the drone operators.
Right.
Essentially, that whole war side of war is fought differently in the Middle East, as you know, as I know. Right. It's essentially people that believe they were put there by God and fight for, to the death and with an ideology that, it's an honor to die. I've been to Syria. I've seen the Shahed culture, they call it, which is like, it's an honor to die for what I believe in. And I was always going, well, actually, the one that wins the war is the ones with the most guys left over. You don't particularly want to die, but that's not how they think in
let's deal with that, since you actually have that history. Two parts of that is, right now we're talking about whether or not the Kurds will be weaponized yet again, even though no one will honor their homeland. But a regular, conventional, even super disciplined soldier versus someone who's working on the end time scenario. It doesn't seem like a mixed match or mismatch in a fight.
Well, look at
its
how
root.
Ukraine has done. You can have. I was pretty confident before the full-scale invasion in Ukraine that we'll give them a bloody nose. And I said to you before, we haven't just done that. We've given them a right hook, a left hook, got them on the ropes. Giving them a standing count. So when you're fighting an enemy in their own country, it's incredibly tough. And an aggressor doesn't have a great track record in history. Look how far the Nazis got before they were beaten back and eventually lost the war, all the way to the English Channel. So, they don't have, and you can keep going far back as that. America had its Vietnam. How did that go? Most Americans will go, yeah, well, you lost every single battle we took part in. And they go, yeah, and what happened? It's like, it's a crazy situation when you decide to embark on doing something like Iran and even Ukraine to an extent, that even if Russia would have taken Kiev, there would have been such a partisan and guerrilla movement in Ukraine to take back the country. They would have lost thousands and thousands of more soldiers, and Iran's no different. You're going to have those fundamentalist guys that want to keep that power, who are going to literally fight until the death. And Americans are going to have to, again, I think I watched an interview quite recently where Hegseth said it was Americans that were going around in a period of time dipping their toe into wars and fighting in countries. We're going to change that. What have they done? Exactly the same thing. They're now looking for weapons of mass destruction on Trump's feeling. No accurate idea of why they're going into the region to topple the government. Who's going to topple it? Who's stepping forward? Just watched another interview tonight. There's nobody stepping forward yet. Nobody's going to step forward until they know that regime is crushed. Are they going to be crushed? Probably not. They're still going to be there in abundance. You remember, I think it was about a couple of months ago, Trump was saying, will come, take over, and 40,000 bloody Lebanese Iranians were killed in the process of trying to court an uprising, and
Yeah, another thing is that assets, if we look at other models, we had this with Iraq, assets that helped America know things dry up. You can only have that intelligence for so long before those intermediaries that were helping you know where things are exterminated in one way, shape, or captured. And it's going to be a big deal. And by the way, I thank you for tomorrow or this weekend's article, because the headline will be Sun Tzu in the Graveyard of Foreign Occupations.
Yeah, they're just pulling out these headlines now. It's like,
just give me a headline. I'll write an article over coffee.
We don't. I mean, people. We're talking a lot about Iran, but it is incestuously linked now. The proxy wars, America, Russia, the supply of ballistics, the supply of drones, the defense capabilities, NATO. It's all linked now. I mean, we've said for a while, probably 6 or 7 months. It's a world war we're in. Just nobody wants to call it that. They're just bearing ahead.
Absolutely.
But I don't know how we're going to get out of it.
Now, I don't know the UK mindset about a lot of things, because I only get to watch, whatever's aired on Guardian or BBC News, etc. And I try, but in America, the land of the crazies right now, there's this. I wrote an article this week about all those who said, never war, no war in Iran was Tulsi Gabbard's sales pitch, actually selling T-shirts with this. And I audited as many of those as I could find. I spent several hours trying to find as many quotes as possible from all those fuckers who were just absolutely apoplectic that Kamala Harris was going to go out and start a war with Iran. And now, even like Alex Jones, is crying with Nick Fuentes that they feel betrayed, that the things they always said that they believed in were not going to be true. But all of us go, but that's what you fucking voted for. That's exactly what you voted for. And in order to stop the Epstein files from being a big deal, why not start a war?
You voted Trump in. I mean, that's it's. I want to make plans in Ukraine. I want to go home. I certainly don't. I'm not a fan of the Iranian regime. Let's put it that way. They've came in, they've supplied weapons that have killed many Ukrainians here. The financial aid to do that, and the tech and the knowledge. Shahed's not a Russian word for starters. It's that's how far they've come in. So it is striking how it to everybody, to a lot of military people, how Iran hasn't helped. It's not helping Ukraine. We're still yet to see the impacts of this on Ukraine. I mean, the thing that worries me at the moment is the Hungarian rhetoric. I mean, it's gonna. Are they pushing in to open up a second front to invade? You've seen he wants to take back the pipeline and open it up, not negotiate or talk. He wants to,
right.
And that's met some hostile reaction from Zelensky today, where now people are saying he wants Orban killed, and it's not quite like that at all. But you can see the propaganda taking shape with people projecting their side of it, that Zelensky's money laundering, when it's a bank that was a bank crew that was abducted in Hungary, and a Ukrainian bank. So you can see them angling these, the Orban administration angling these jobs to put it into the public domain that Zelensky's still money laundering shit ton of money.
Exactly.
And he wants me dead, and this is all because Orban's losing his grip on power, and he can see it waning away. So, one of the scariest thoughts are that he just brings in martial law and stops the elections. I can pretty much see a lot of people in Hungary going nuts at that. But Hungary's got its own problems, deflecting his own issues. I mean, they've got their own paedophile scandals, their own Epstein files involving the schools in Hungary, which we touched on before. So
right.
He's doing his best to really shift the blame. Every other tweet is Zelensky and Ukrainians. I mean, he's seeing Ukrainians in his sleep at the moment, Orban. But that really does worry me because how that might stretch the Ukrainians, I don't know. But if it's anything like America, they can lose a lot of lives coming into a drone war, which I've got a lot
Absolutely.
of faith in. The Ukrainians have pretty had a lot of experience in putting together. So he's going to think twice about coming across the border, surely.
I don't know if my teammate had signed in because we have 33, but one of my NatSec media team buddies is a drone builder, and we talked about AI, digital arrays like you see in entertainment shows where 1,000 drones do light shows, and I said, if you weaponize that, and I'll go even further to say when I wrote Hacking ISIS book about mainly it was about propaganda, but I had to address the hackers. The hackers were really suck, which is good news. CC and all those groups and
Mm.
Cyber Caliphate. And the thing is there was a chapter I wrote up, even though I wouldn't put it in the book and didn't turn it into the publisher, about what would I do with the same resources. And there's a reason why I didn't write that, or I didn't send it out was because I don't want to give away that manual. Um, and now we have the reality, like you just said this earlier, a reverse or a different version of Operation Spiderweb that an enemy launches. If someone were to bring a crate of FPV style drones, these like digital drone setups, and were to be able to deploy them, there is no real EW in electronic warfare for those. There is no EW in America that's tuned to what is tuned here. Here you can't do that shit. Both sides are so sensitive at that front line that you that's why we're at the optical level. But what if you're in the Nebraska, you're in Nevada, you're in Ohio somewhere. There's none of that sitting in the farms. There's none of that sitting in the cities. And I think, one of the points you put in here in our bullet points for tonight is the drone war has gone global, and that includes the defense against those things.
It's incredibly hard. When you've got an enemy as fanatical as the Iranians, who just today, I think they said on the press that several Iranian spies were in the UK with just been arrested. So you
Yeah,
know, you're talking about a nation that would stick a dirty bomb in, Paris or Berlin or, those guys really don't care. They will do that now for sure.
right.
Whether Trump's probably the slim pickings is that he sort of said that he had this feeling they were close to making a nuclear weapon, but didn't they just hit those meant to
Yeah.
have destroyed them? Didn't Pete Hegseth
But
say
wasn't
that
it
completely
wasn't
at
it
night?
last year that they said they did that? It was all obliterated. It was all taken care
Yeah.
of.
So and now, fast forward a year later. I mean, Trump's got it wrong on so many occasions now. I mean, this is just another one I think that could be his undoing. It could be the final nail in the coffin for Trump, to be honest.
Right.
I mean, the reaction to just 6 guys being killed was incredible. Russia's sustained 1.2 million casualties. And in the US, you're quite rightly upset that 6 people lost their lives because of this. So the balance, Russia's playing that card. The Iranians are playing that card. They know if they kill a lot of Americans, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Trump at home. And where do you go with that? And there's going to be a terrorist attack somewhere. They've already said and made it public that they're going to
Mm.
get some retribution for the Ayatollah Khamenei. And I think generally we're going to be able to look at. And drones are the new buzzword. I mean, you can't stop them, and they could drive in, and you could have an Operation Spider's Web that we saw in Ukraine inside the UK or mainland
Hmm.
Europe. It's a very hard time especially for security services in these countries that are probably, especially in the UK, are probably underfunded and being stripped of, over the last 10, 20 years of tools to be able to do the job. So yeah, and cyber, we haven't even touched on that yet. I mean, that's a continual threat anyway.
Yeah.
The NHS in the UK, they've hit various organisations, and that's constantly ongoing. We've got the Chinese in on that as well. So, this
Well,
is some really dark
uh,
times.
I have an APT Advanced Persistent Threat article that I'm working on about the Iranian hackers as part of the one I did. this week. Again, for the viewers who are just joining us, I have a few articles this week on these items. And one I did the other day was the difference between the fight we had in 2003 against the Iraqis and the fight we have at modern times against the Iranians. And what the Iraqis did not have, or at least it wasn't substantial enough, that the Iranians definitely have, is they have APT level hackers. And for the viewers to think about what that means to you guys, is the advanced persistent threat. So advanced meaning that the quality of the software, the quality of the knowledge base, and the application is top notch, and it's institutional level. Typically, almost always, and nearly exclusively, it's nation state. Um, the persistent side is the fact that you have literally a bureau, just like the Russians have 26165, 74455 GRU units. Um, they have shifts, they have coffee, they have the lights on, there's whatever food they want, they're in rotation shifts. And there's an advanced structure that's designed to keep them focused. And thus, because of this, they have the that particular level of threat. Well, Iranians have those threats also covered. And I will, at some point in the middle of all the things I like to write, I will get this one finished. But I want to write it from a point of view that's useful to the reader. I don't want to just pour the data on page. I want to see, like, how do you make sure that your hospital systems are protected, your banking systems, protected. What type of vulnerabilities are they going to look at, and what do people need to understand about them? So I want to go to what in our list here we had the Ukraine's attacks inside Russia, and you want to comment a little bit about what's happening on that end?
Which specific one?
Number three, Ukraine's long-range drone war inside Russia.
Ah, okay. I've just missed that. I skipped through that quite quickly.
That's all right.
Yeah, I mean, I've missed a lot. To be honest, I've missed a lot of the news with the traveling this week. So you might have to fill in a bit on that. But
You may just read it.
yeah,
I can just pump it out.
yeah. Go on.
Yeah, the Novosibirsk strike. We have Reuters reported that 172 Ukrainian drones overnight, including 67 over the Black Sea and 66 over the Krasnodar region, struck the Siskari oil terminal, hitting 6 to 7 loading facilities. Also, these are specific, outlets to the Black Sea
Mm,
oil terminals, loading in about 700,000 barrels per day.
mm,
Um, and also, we have at large, we've seen this increase of Ukraine hitting these very important nodes inside Russia using, again, low cost compared to the nation state levels that we're talking about with the United States, low cost tech to hit this. And our new Minister of Defense, Mikhail Fedorov, is aces at this. I went to
mm,
Brave One Tech Valley last September. I've been watching this development the entire time, but I've also been watching his particular attitude, which is to bring in investors, everything from the FPV, the ground units, the Magura Sea Baby units,
mm,
to components, even because, as you know, here, just like Russia has to watch for finding out where their various servos go to make FPV drones, etc., the Ukrainians go through the same thing. So there was a Brave One component expo, I guess not really an expo, but it was sort of like an expo here in Kiev, where investors are brought in to show, here are the types of small items that normally would be outsourced are being created right here. The only thing that they
mm,
wanted was reasonable R&D here, show us that it works, show us that you're the one to invest in. And they're connecting with outside investors and developers to say, yeah, we have the tech and the tools to be able to upload that, upgrade that, into a better standing. So when you have um, that kind of very modern, especially he's a young fellow, Fedorov, you have that
mm.
young energy that says, all right, think we can't do it? Yeah, well, here's what we're going to do. And in fact, one of our experts in drones just jumped into the chat here, so I know he'll appreciate this. The development has been um, in line with how the war evolves. So instead of having an antiquated stuck in the old mindset of we're going to come in with tanks, we're going to lob missiles, we're going to do all these things that
Blitzkrieg.
America's going to do. Yeah, blitzkrieg, right? You have a different type of warfare here in this drone warfare that's very responsive. And frankly, the tech that's out there has to be very fresh. It does not matter what you developed as a UGV, unmanned ground vehicle in 2022, 2023, or even 2024, maybe even 2025. We need to know that you just tested it in the last 2 fucking months. It has to be tested near the front. It does not need to be tested in, you know, like even in Lviv, to be honest with you, tests that are too far away from the front are useless, and they're not interested in talking. And that is why Ukraine is still able to hold itself through this war.
Very much so. And that comes into that strange strategic stalemate, for 4 years. Well, it's not. I mean, I keep people, there's a wrong word, probably stalemate, but certainly some things from the very off, the full scale invasion, Ukraine has
Hmm.
always fought for time. It's always pulled back, allowed Russians to come into killing areas, kill them, keep pulling back,
Hmm.
hold it on
Hmm.
till they can't get anymore. They've always done that for, a lot of the Western media really struggled to deal with the tactics of, we're never going to get in a bun fight on those opening days in a trench on trench situation because we'd have been mowed down. They're the vast superior numbers, so we had to fight and withdraw. And I mean that's been going on for 4 years.
Hmm.
The flip side of that now is that in the last sort of year and a half to 2 years, there's been a power shift, as I keep talking to people about.
Hmm.
We're now firing 200 drones into
Right.
Russia. We're now firing ballistic missiles into Russia. Where could we have done that in 2022? No, because the Americans were going escalation, escalation, escalation. We can't do that. Now we're hitting those recycling plants, those command nodes, logistic routes. Russia's struggling to recruit people now. In the last 2 or 3 months, it was Fedorov who said, "I want to get to 50,000 casualties a month." And that is a very young, dynamic Ukrainian government against a very, old, decrepit Russian leadership that cut his teeth in the Soviet era. And we touched on it before in that episode, the Soviet playbook. Have you tried turning it off and on? Because that's a
Right.
knee-jerk reaction to what's going on in Russia, with a lot of the mill bloggers now criticizing the leadership and how they've got into this. Has now got closing up shop with Western social media
Hmm.
trying to take them back to the Soviet era where they could control, watch, look, and see who's right and what about who.
Right.
And that's where the paranoia now in Russia is visible. To the point where the ripples of discontent are actually growing in Russia. I still don't think you're going to see a coup or anything like that. But we said the same thing about Gorbachev. We said the same thing when Prigozhin went and did his mutiny and
Right.
into nobody was touching him driving towards Moscow. People were actually cheering, taking pictures with him. So they're all Russia's done, all Kremlin's done, all Putin's done. It's just paper over the cracks. So it is pretty brittle, and it's stuff like now where the blackouts in Belgrade and Russia and Moscow and recycling, centers are being, recycling plants are being here, where certainly, the average Russian doesn't earn a great deal. 800 to £1,000 a month, is a salary paycheck for a
Hmm.
Russian. When you start 50%, 60% of your salary is going on food and fuel, or no fuel in some places, in some cases, and you're losing family members, 1.2 million. The propaganda can't hide that gap between, what was promised, which was a 3-day SMO, to a full-scale war, lost,
Hmm.
sustained 1.2 million casualties. The propaganda can't keep up with that. It just can't. So what we've seen, as I touched on in the last episode, was that swagger's gone. The now Russian propaganda is fighting fires, and the quickest way to do that is to control the social media and what people see. So this is where Russia's at. So how this Iran situation affects that moving forward, I don't know. This is the
Hmm.
thing to would tell the viewers to go and look out for, in the coming months, because this is, as I said, I kept pointing out that whenever Russia gets in trouble, Trump seems to come to the rescue. And that's where I'm sitting there. I don't want to think it, but the back of my head is sort of going, looking for the why, the why this could be beneficial to Russia, because Trump's now really launched an invasion, or whatever you want to call it, really not having, to use his own words, to Steve Witkoff's words, it's a silly, operation. And, it doesn't seem that the American military has the cards on this, or thought about it, and now you're sitting there with the Ukrainians being asked to help to deal with drone and Shahed one-way drone attack drones. It is very humbling to see, that they've asked Ukraine for help, but like I said earlier, the same breath they're slagging off Biden and Ukrainians for the situation they're in. So it's a very, very difficult thing to really understand what's going on, even for a professional. We can only guess.
Well, thanks to our conversation, I pulled up my son. I always keep Sun Tzu here beside me. I know what the article for the weekend will be. And there's in the second chapter, Waging War. When you engage in actual fighting, if victory is long in coming, men's weapons will grow dull and their ardor will be dampened. And if you lay siege to a town, you exhaust your strength. And again, and this is the most important line, if the campaign is protracted, the resources of state will not equal the strain.
No.
And that's the deal. I mean, England went to war in Afghanistan a century plus ago. The Soviet Union expended itself in Afghanistan, and that's a near territory. The United States has done it. The United States did it in Vietnam, did it in Iraq, did it in Afghanistan, and now Russia's doing it here. And you highlighted the point about what it means back home is that there's a point of saturation where it will hit. And AP, I put this also in our notes there as part of what you. By the way, Shaun, you do great, man. I love when you put these good bullet points together. What's on your mind? So I've one of the quotes from AP this week: the drone age will not arrive in theory papers. It arrived over Ukrainian cities, and now everyone else is catching up to lessons Ukraine paid for in blood.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I mean, I was writing something similar to that. When you want to a good write, I thought everybody else was writing the same article, to be honest. When I put it out, I was like, from you don't have the cards to, can you give us a hand? Can we borrow a few of your cards? That's
Right.
where the Trump administration is at the moment. And it was good to see that that was probably my biggest post to date so far. Even Ben Hodges put a thumbs up to it. So, it is, we got to remember, Russia's literally 4 years ago started its full-scale invasion. It had quite a large proportion of Ukraine anyway. It's only taken something like 1% of the country in 4 years for 1.2 million casualties, and now it's got its economy teetering. It's in a far worse position now than globally than it was in 2022. It can't protect its allies like Iran. It can't protect Venezuela. Cuba must be sweating buckets at the moment about where they think they're going to go next. So even the go back to the milk bloggers again, are turning on saying we're on our own. And even I think this week Lavrov was saying we're literally we could be next. Where do you go? And this is not a Russia. If you go back to the start of 2022, it was we're going to be in Kiev in 3 days. We'll be home. The Ukrainians will collapse. To now going, actually, we're watching all our friends get taken over. We could be next. Yeah. You can see why Russians are sitting there. What's going on? We're meant to be the second most powerful army in the world, and yet we can't even get Donetsk Oblast in 11 years. Of pushing for that. So it is, we've always got to remember there's a lot of pressure on Russia at the moment, and things like Iran and what Trump's little sound bites and comments detract from that. They give Putin breathing space. Hungary, Orban are giving Putin breathing space. So it's really important to stick on social media, stick on those facts of where Russia actually is at the moment. Because
Right.
what we want is that pressure to still keep mounting on Putin and not be sidetracked by, Trumpisms or, his attacks on the UK.
Yeah, and I'm not going to try to predict really what Russia's reaction with Trump will be about Iran. They don't seem to have been hammering him hard. They're kind of letting it play out. There's not been a really loud Kremlin. I mean, there's been a lightweight condemnation compared to what they can say. But in the chatter space, like I pay attention to a bunch of the pro-Russian Telegram accounts that they're they're in a quandary. They don't really know where to go with it because crazy
Yeah, yeah.
Trump. Yeah, they really don't. It's a normally there's some perceivable directions of their narratives, and right now there's Trump's lost his mind, and is definitely rooting against America being able to be successful in this. But at the same time, they don't have a direction because there's no loyalty to Iranians themselves at all.
No.
They're just basically tools of a Russian mindset in those sectors.
It is, and it stems to Brahim. I spoke to him in Morocco, saying it's got
Hmm.
RT posters outside his house. It's like the tentacles of the Kremlin and the state propaganda go quite far. Especially
Right.
into Africa and stuff. So, and you've got to remember that they're pulling in troops because they can't get any more enough Russians to fill in the gaps. So they're pulling all these people from the poorest parts of the world to
That's right.
fundamentally invade another country for them. And having spoke to them myself in India, Indians, Africans, people from South America, these guys are wondering why I don't. One of the things I'm looking for in these exchanges, and I'll try and find out for our next meeting, is how many foreign fighters that weren't born in Ukraine and Russia were exchanged during these exchanges. What you'll find is Putin just doesn't want to exchange those guys from those countries outside of
Hmm.
Russia because one, it will dry up. They will tell everybody the realities of the war. It will dry up his recruitment from Africa and all those places where criminal gangs are bringing in these guys from places like Mogadishu to countries where there are a consulate or an embassy, where they can then get them into Russia for 2 weeks, knowing they'll probably break their visa, uh, conditions, where they can then recruit them into the Russian military or send them back to where they came from. So,
Right.
he doesn't want to do that. So I'd be interested to see out of this 500 people swap for swap, how many of these guys actually were exchanged that actually were from outside of Russia or Ukraine, because Putin doesn't want to exchange this. He's only exchanging white ethnic Russians. So, anybody coming in from an outside country, whether you've got a Russian passport or not, is generally a second class citizen. So, we want our guys back. So, I'm not sure that the Ukrainians would not, jump on the chance to get Brits and Americans that are being held over in
Hmm.
captivity, which is what we're trying to campaign for. But certainly, I'll be shocked if they did actually exchange any of these foreign combatants, especially the Chinese and the North Koreans we've got sitting in there that are fighting for Russia, which again. Um, NATO and the minute the North Koreans turned up in Ukraine and fighting for Russia, we should have had NATO troops all the way up to the Dnipro River. I still say now. Look, if we'd have brought them in a year and a half, 2 years ago, Ukraine are now bombing,
Right.
Russia. Where are the nuclear weapons? They're not firing nuclear weapons. So it is a bone of contention. Certainly with me, I think once you start bringing in other armies to fight in Europe like North Korea, I think we should have had our own red lines with that and done something about that. But
Well, like you said
yeah,
earlier, I mean, the idea that we're not at a world war is naive. Anyone who thinks that we're not at
yeah,
world war level is naive because if you look at World War II, it's not like every single country was involved. It's just that the core focus of the major industrial powers were definitely full bore into each other. So China's the only one. China and India are the only ones that are kind of in a swagger in the distance. And keep seeing people posting this. Trump has lifted the sanction on Russian oil as an ally of truth and all of our friends. Let's really use refined language just so we get to the actual problem. Yes, but also no. In other words, there are plenty of sanctions that are still in place, local oil, etc. But yes, correct. A portion of these waivers have been granted, and that's what should not happen. So let's call that what it is.
Well, let's balance it even more.
Yeah.
Then we
Yeah,
shouldn't be buying. Europe shouldn't be buying oil or gas off it. This is not America bashing by any means. We're coming at you. Unfortunately, America, Trump's administration, not America. Trump's administration is largely. How many times have you heard him say he's going to pull back from Ukraine, but then not, and
right.
pushed in even more? And Matt, it's not. He's just stopped sanctions on Belarus, some of the Belarusian aerospace companies. Right. He's released sanctions for some of the leading diplomats that Russia is sending over, like Kirill Dmitriev, who's funneling and funding Steve Witkoff's businesses. Their relationship is still yet to be come out in the media how those two are entwined. So it's not. Are we hitting the Shadow Fleet tankers, all of them? No, we're not. We've hit a few. Where's that oil going? Probably to subsidize, or I think Trump said he's selling.
Yeah, Russia's pushing back in Europe in the courts about those assets, saying what's been done is illegal, and they're going to play lawfare now in the European community to try to free up those assets and at least make it difficult as we see it. Before we go, and I want to thank everyone who's joining us with us tonight. I know you've been traveling. What are your thoughts about the reception that you had while you were back home? How were things?
It was amazing, to be honest. The receptions, we got so many people requesting interviews about what's going on in Ukraine and how how it is on the ground. Still, people are astonished that people like Chris were coming over to Ukraine and still demining and doing what he was doing.
Yeah, God bless him.
I mean, it's just for how many lives he's saved over the since 2014 out here demining is beggars belief. So we're trying to get some sort of posthumous award for him for his service, and he set up Prevail, the charity over here. Like many others, we're still trying to. I get asked a lot about prisoners in captivity and what it's really like. People are generally interested in how the difference between how Ukrainian treat Russian prisoners, which is vastly different to being in captivity in Russia. So it is still there's still a lot of support in the UK and Europe for Ukraine. However, there's X's platform is so different to another platform like Blue Sky. If you believed all the news on X, you'd think Russia had conquered Ukraine 2 or 3 years ago. It's not the case, which is why it's so important that we talk about the realities on the ground here about, Russia is actually really struggling. It's actually, it's in a war that it can't win. It's bogged down. And globally, it's really important to tell people that it can't protect its allies anymore. So, I'm hoping that the information war is starting to claw back, but certainly the papers are full of support for Ukraine still. Unfortunately, Iran has now taken a lot of the... I am visiting Canada very shortly in April. I'm going to put some stuff out on my Twitter very shortly about that and some dates and places where you can get tickets. So I am definitely coming to Canada at the end of April. So looking forward to that visit. And
Martin's in Winnipeg, and see Martin's typing here about that. So I'm glad you guys are seeing each other now.
Yeah, we've talked before.
Definitely, there's some resources with him and the others that say, "Hey, come here, we'll do some."
Well, we're talking actually in Canada about trauma, mental trauma, and how best to deal with it when you're especially soldiers, and how how you could do pre-treatment before you go out to combat zones and things like that. Then, how to deal with that PTSD and traumatic stress. So that you could get when you come back from somewhere like that. So we're literally going to be talking about that to the League of Ukrainian Canadians, and as well we're visiting, as well as sort of medical conferences and psychiatric conferences. So I mean, people are generally interested. I mean, this is a war that's, our soldiers from all our countries could end up fighting in, because it's not getting smaller, it's growing. This conflict is now spilling out to other places in the world. You've got Pakistan and Afghanistan kicking off. You've got all the problems in Iran, and then all the products. Iran's now firing missiles into to lots of other countries that are now may get involved, in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and the UAE and stuff. So this is not getting smaller, it's getting bigger by careless politicians who are not really I don't want to say dumb as fuck, but they're clearly not understanding the regions of the conflicts and what's going on, and then launch themselves into these tirades. I mean, I'm really disappointed with the support element for Ukraine in respects to the Shahed fleet and still buying gas off Russia. I think even Putin this week said he may stop selling gas to Europe.
Right.
I was like, what? We're still buying it? I mean, what the hell? It's like I got to get my head in those sanctions and what's actually sanctioned and what's not at the moment. It is terrible that we're still Orban's trying to push the pipeline open, yet Ukraine's been invaded. Russia has committed most heinous crimes, as I've said, for stuff we haven't seen since the Second World War. Stolen children. And some reason Orban wants to blame Ukraine for that.
And actually, for
our
viewers, tomorrow I'm going to an event here in Kiev about captive civilians, and I'm hoping to see my friend Yulia, who her dad's in captivity, and we'll see how that. I'll see what I can learn, and also, of course, add some more context to it. And we just have a whole lot to go. So, are you really? I mean, I don't know about you, but aren't you really appreciating this interested audience who have proven to us that they really want to know what's going on?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's reading it and then hearing it from on the ground. We take a lot of Ukrainian perspectives in what's going on out there, and it's it is different to how someone like someone who sees it like Steve Witkoff is projecting in the White House. It's totally different. So we're able to comment out, which is pretty good. I'd like to we could talk about captivity in the next episode with all those people if you want. We could go into what it's like to be captive, what's happening in there. We can do a segment on that, probably. We can cover
that's very important. Absolutely.
Yeah, we can talk about that. And I've just done a couple of talks, which has got me revved up and in the mood. And we bring in a bit of humour with it, and I can bring some stories into it, and we can talk about that. And I think that'd be quite good for people to understand.
Well, one of my team guys is in this chat with us, and we're planning on coming down Dnipro and hanging out with you in Dimko. So
that'd be cool.
We could do also a filming of that. But I would like to actually also invite you to join me when we have some time to go out to Lviv. There's a rehabilitation center for the guys who are in captivity, who my Marine friends, and they would love to see you, I'm sure, because they see the videos.
Yeah, definitely. I think we should do that. Like an episode out on the field somewhere.
Yeah, just go out there and talk to him. Say, because like one of my friends, Vladik he's a great young commander. He's got just an on fire attitude, and he's getting a lot of TV time in Ukrainian television and YouTube. But Artur and Vladislav, who came home, who I'm very close to, their wives and them now. They got featured. Artur got featured in an hour-long, YouTube interview the other day, and I was like, man, I just love seeing you, but more importantly, I'm glad that we could hear what's happening out there, and people need to hear. We will do exactly what you just said. People need to hear what exactly does it mean. What are the the tools that they use to terrorize and oppress both the soldiers and the civilians. So we got to do that.
Yeah, just so you understand that what they under the been through. So and every story needs to be told, documented, because we need to get the word out. What these are what Russia's doing in the occupied territories is just a spin off, a less I don't know. To what I went through in captivity, it's just it's occupation, coercive, jailed, they're imprisoned, and not given basic human rights. And so, if we can tell you what they do in prisons to prisoners of war, you're going to be shocked what's going on in the occupied territories when they're under Russian control.
On Tuesday, we actually have my friend Eleni Umorova, who is a journalist, Crimean journalist who was in captivity, and she spoke at the Empty Chairs event, which I aired last week. So Tuesday night, roughly this time, 10 o'clock Kiev time, we'll go live with her, and I'll be honest, I don't know what to expect, because sometimes, especially when we talk to someone who went through that, who I know the emotions on my end get to be pretty heavy, because I really care about these folks, and they're so, especially when you get to hug them and see them, and they're not two-dimensional on television. No offense to people we see only in two-dimensional terms, but we do. A lot of people, that's the only way they get to see you or Aiden and the Ukrainians. But when you're physically standing around them and you feel their spirit and you feel how they are, very protective. So I hope our viewers will join there. And of course, follow Shaun's account. If you're already subscribed, consider a paid subscription. If you're not subscribing, you're just seeing it, tag on and also consider paid subscription. And man, people are really digging what you're doing. I dig what you're doing. I'm glad to be working with you. And
me too.
We'll be here this time next week.
Well, I'll be back in Ukraine next week, so we're definitely Martin. I'll catch you. I'll get you on the back channels, Martin, and we'll have a chat. Yeah, certainly. I can't wait to get back. We've got some amazing projects we're going to line up and hopefully put together when I get back to Ukraine. So, and I want to see my wife and my cat.
Yeah, right.
So I'm desperate to see my cat again, as well as my wife. I have to say that, not necessarily in that order, but
right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be back in only about 30 minutes, because we'll be starting up the show with Mark Zaid in under 1 hour. In about 30 minutes, I'll fire this back up, and so I hope people will join us. We're going to talk about the king of whistleblower knowledge, and his fight against the Trump administration and the clearance system that they've been weaponizing. Also, since you guys like to think about Russia, we will definitely be talking about what he learned about the Havana syndrome, the sonic attacks that were going on in Cuba.
I might listen to that, actually.
Oh yeah, come on back. We're not going anywhere.
Drop
We're just gonna switch the bad channels over, same bad channel, different bad time.
Somebody just put, glad you mentioned the wife first.
Right.
Cheers, Dan.
Larissa's a saint. So thank you, brother. We'll see you shortly, and don't forget again to follow Shaun's posts, and we will be doing a lot more there. Love you, bro.
Yeah, see you later, mate. Check it out. Bye, everybody.
All right. Everyone knows Slava Ukraini.
Slava.
И пиздец Російської Федерації.